Hi, it's Chris Moore with Senior Remodeling Experts. Welcome to Aging in Place is a Team Sport. It's a video series where we talk to different providers. We explore how families, professionals, and communities can come together to help older adults live safely, comfortably, and independently at home. I'm here to guide you, connect you with the right resources, and help make the rest of your life the best of your life. Welcome back to Aging in Place is a Team Sport. I'm Chris Moore with Senior Remodeling Experts. And on this podcast, we talk to remarkable individuals who are part of the team in Aging in Place and helping make people's lives more meaningful and more significant. And to that note, I have with me today Meme Mulugeta, who has two companies, the one and only publishing company and the Legacy Project. And I'm so excited for our conversation today because Mimi's work allows families to preserve memories, stories, and legacies and pieces of people's lives that are so often lost and forgotten in the type of society we live in where people are not connected in the way that they used to be. In my book, I have a chapter called The Rise and the Fall of the Waltons Model, where I talk about multi-generational housing and where people grow up with their grandparents under the same roof and are able to absorb that wisdom and those stories and the legacy of where their family came from. And so often today, we don't have that. So Mimi has a really great approach. And I'd just like to say, welcome to the podcast, Mimi.
Thank
And
you,
we
Chris.
can't wait to hear more about your work.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome. So tell us about the Legacy Project.
Yeah. Well, I would love to start with the birth of the Legacy Project.
Okay.
I publish books for a living, and there was a young, older woman. Her name was Nellie Rembrandt, and we were ghostwriting her book. And she was super old fashioned, where she didn't have the ability to send emails and send her voice notes. So my company had her call us every week and share pieces of her story, and we would record it on the phone. And unfortunately, she died before her book published. And it was heartbreaking because while she was able to share her story, she didn't get to see the end product of it. But where the Legacy Project really birthed came from when the book was fully completed. She was estranged from her daughter. She hadn't spoken to her daughter for about 10 years, but she told us through conversation that she would hope that her daughter had the opportunity to read her book about her life story. So we went on a hunt to find her daughter, and we finally found her daughter and gave her the book, gave her all the copyright and everything. And her daughter read it and she was in tears.
Wow.
It was something that was looming over her head, that relationship, and she missed out on that time with her mother. And so she did end up asking us if we could give her the raw content of the voice recordings. And of course, we gave that to her and she got to hear her voice. And she said something really important. She said, I wish I could have saw her facial expression when she said that particular story. I would have loved to see that. And that sort of kind of piqued my desire to want to record individuals and create these cinematic style videos for their loved ones, because it's not just what you say, it's how you say it, how you look when you say it. And it's such a blessing to be able to see that. So the Legacy Project is essentially where we go to the comfort of your home and we record 3 sessions of content where we ask you certain questions, we prompt you, and you share your story in pieces. And then we eventually take those recordings and we create a beautiful Netflix style documentary. Man, I've been saying that wrong all day. Documentary style video, as well as a keepsake book that you can hand over to your loved ones and to those who know you. And it's just something that they can keep forever. And you will find that there are questions people never thought to ask, but is asked through this process, that now they have closure and they have a deeper understanding of their loved ones.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because sometimes people will open up more with someone they barely know than they do with, with their family, because sometimes there's emotional baggage. And I think it's interesting that this was all birthed from a estranged relationship. And you think about how often that happens. And oftentimes it's, an angry word or a tense moment or some circumstance that causes that rift in the beginning, but then it's stubbornness and awkwardness that keeps it
That's right.
right. Because where it reminds me of the Home Alone movie where the old man next door hadn't spoken to his son for 10 years or whatever, and he's and then Kevin just talks to him and says, "Well, just give him a call. I mean, what could it hurt? If he hangs up on you, you're not any worse off than you are, but you have to be emotionally vulnerable to make that phone call."
That's
And
right.
how often we wait until it's too late,
Yep.
and
Yep.
then we have regret.
Yep.
Wow, that's really cool. And then when you do the book, do you also give people, like, if they have pictures, if they have memories, if they have maybe, things that they've done that they were very proud of, or just mementos.
Absolutely. And that also goes into the document documentary as well, because it's important to have a visual. So we do include that in the book, and we include that in the video as well. That allows people to kind of see, some of these are really, older photos that are kind of worn down, and we try to rebuild it back up so that you could
Right.
see a clearer picture of them. And it's beautiful to be able to see those things, because we have albums for days, but how often do we go through those albums? That doesn't happen very often. So we ask that they provide that to us so that we could
Right.
provide a visual effect.
Wow.
Yeah.
So who is your typical client, if there is
Yeah.
such a thing?
Well, this project is meant for anyone who feels as though they want to preserve their story, but who we see come to us more often than not are individuals that are truly close to the end of their life. Whether you're an elder, whether you have just found out that you're experiencing early onset dementia, a cancer patient we had, a lot of people in hospice. We try to, capture this story before they are at that point, but sometimes that's not the case, where we'll be at the very tip of it. And we're just kind of drilling down as much as we can, as quick as we can, so that at least we have that on recording. So yeah, it's really meant for anyone who feels their story is important. But to me, I believe everybody's story is important to preserve.
Right, 100%. But if I'm hearing you right, you're saying that more often than not, it's only when people start to anticipate or see that they're nearing the end of their life that they recognize the value of creating this legacy and
That's
begin to think about.
That's right. That's right. Or, we tend to have, even I've found an influx of individuals that want to say something to their family, but they're not comfortable saying it until they pass. So
Okay.
I had a elderly gentleman who never told his son that he loved him ever,
Oh
ever.
my goodness.
And he, even to record it was very difficult, but you could tell through his facial expressions, and even part of it was his tears, was that he had this love for his son, but it just was very hard to convey it in words. And what a blessing was it to be able to give that to his son, and to his son to see that for the first time. I mean, wow.
Wow. Well, there's a certain belief system among men that believes that would be weakness in some way, right?
Yeah,
And I don't think it's as prevalent as it used to be, but it's certainly still around that men are supposed to be strong and tough and untouchable, and nothing can upset me, and God forbid you should ever shed a tear or show any tenderness. And I think that's sad.
it is so sad.
But at least he found a way to express it.
That's right. Yeah. We often think that sharing our story is only just meant for the people that we're leaving our story to. But I often find that sharing your story is also powerful for the individual sharing it. We tend to think about our life holistically with a life of regret, things I didn't do, things I should have accomplished, things I didn't take advantage of. But then when you have that moment where you're sharing pieces of your life and you're kind of putting it back together, you look back and you say, whoa, like I lived a full life. I lived a life that was full of love and joy. And yes, I made mistakes, but I also made really great decisions that has brought me here. And I think that gives that individual a lot of peace to know that they left a fulfilling life.
Yeah, so it's a way to reframe the past.
That's right.
I've often noticed that it's far easier for people to recognize talent and recognize ability and recognize giftings in other people than it is to recognize them in yourself.
That's right.
Because, we know who we are, right? We've heard every lie we've ever told ourselves. We've heard every excuse we've ever told ourselves. We've heard, you know, every every criticism of ourselves we've said in our self-talk, and we look at other people, we just see what's on the outside, and we say, "Oh, well, they're so successful, and they've done this, and they've done that." And we often discount our own strengths and abilities.
Right. Yeah.
So,
And yeah, and the problem with that is that when we discount it, we then feel that our story is not worthy enough to share, and that's where the cycle continues. You don't leave a legacy to your loved ones because you don't feel like your story was worthy enough to really record and share with the family, with the people you're leaving behind. Man, I heard a saying that the graveyard is the richest place in the world, right? Because that's where all the stories, all the ideas die.
um,
And so, unfortunately, it's time. I'm doing this so that we can break that cycle, so that we can
yeah,
realize every piece of our story is important.
right. It reminds me of a saying I heard, and I don't even know where I heard it, but it says, "Don't die with your music still inside of you."
That's good.
And let your dreams, live your dreams today because we're not guaranteed tomorrow.
That's right.
Yeah. So do you in your marketing or as you're telling people about this project, do you use that narrative of that, you have a story inside of you, your story is important, you are valuable, you are esteemed. How do you go about, telling people about what you do?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I am called to bring people's stories out to the world. Like that's what I know I'm meant to do in this world. And that is the biggest hurdle that my company faces is that, the mindset, right? The mindset that they don't feel worthy enough or their story is not important to take note. And yeah, through the prompted questions, I think that's the key part of this process is that as I'm asking very critical questions, it allows them to get their mind in a place where, wait, I never thought of that, or I never considered that. What is your earliest childhood memory? What is that story? Because 9 times out of 10, your children never ask that. What is your earliest childhood memory?
Mm.
And it's something it was important enough for you to remember it. And that kind of brings them in a place where they feel encouraged and want to continue. But I will say this, majority of my clients are not the actual storyteller. It's the kids or the relatives or the loved ones that want that person's story to be recorded.
Yeah.
They do it begrudgingly because they're like, well, my daughter wanted me to do this. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it. I don't see the point. That's what I get a lot. I don't see the point. But once we start, their face lights up and they're like, whoa, like I
Wow.
now see the point.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I have a similar experience. I'm a remodeling contractor and I do home modifications to increase people's safety and accessibility. And I get a lot of that same, no, I don't want that or resistance to it or somehow makes people think about getting older and people associate getting older with getting weaker and sicker. And that's why I wrote the book Age Out Loud, because you don't have to get weaker and sicker as you get older necessarily.
Yeah.
You can live a fulfilling and purposeful life. And like it says in the book of Job in the Bible, arrive at the grave in full vigor. And I love that verse, you know, that's kind of that's kind of the goal, to live to be 100 years old and be active and sharing and contributing to the world around you, just not wake up one morning, right? I mean,
Right. That's right.
I don't
No, that's
ask for
good.
much, Mimi.
Yeah, that's good.
But yet so many people have that mindset and that expectation that, you're going to be sick, you're going to be weak, you're going to be disabled, you're going to not be able to function and be a burden to your children and all of that narrative. And I'm not saying sometimes that doesn't happen. I'm not saying that people don't have accidents and people don't have, chronic diseases but we shouldn't expect that to be the norm.
That's right.
Right? We should expect the norm to be, living a full, healthy life.
That's right.
And like the trees are the most brilliant in the autumn, our lives can be the most brilliant in the later decades of our life. If we take the wisdom and the life experience and the giftings that we have received and apply them to make the world a better place,
Amen.
which is what you're doing.
Yeah.
So how long have you been doing this? I'm curious.
The Legacy project was actually birthed as of this year in January of 2020. Just
Okay.
launched it. But I've been doing the publishing company for over 2 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how's the launch going? I mean, how many people have
We've had a good consistent flow of 3 to 4 clients a month.
okay.
Part of the biggest hurdle that we faced is obviously, other people in different states want the service. So we try to make it at least we wanted to make it cost effective. So we try to bundle that particular state together and have multiple recordings in that particular state. So we're not moving, just for one project, but maybe for 2 or 3.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's been going well. It's had a lot of positivity, a lot of excitement. And, one of the things I love about business in general, once you do a really good job with one person, they'll tell 10 people and it just continues to, snowball and continues. I felt the need to start doing podcasts and start sharing because I hear more and more people telling me, "Man, I wish I knew about this before my so and so passed away." And it's lack of knowledge that
Mhm.
these services are available to you that makes it hard for me to take in because I really wanted it to be available for everyone. But if they don't know about it, they're never going to look for it, right? You don't know what you don't know.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's one of the things I've heard is make yourself findable to the people who are already looking for what it is that you do,
that's right.
rather than trying to find customers. And that
That's
that was really a revelation for me. So you do these recordings on location. You actually
yeah.
travel to the person's home.
Yep. It feels very cinematic. It's very in person. It's very personable. We don't want you to we even went to nursing homes and did recordings in
Uh,
the nursing home. We meet you where you're at to make it as convenient as possible.
okay.
Yeah.
So do you obviously have a crew? I mean, you're doing the interview and then you've got somebody running the camera and lights and
Yeah. Yeah,
so
and the more we get interest in a particular state to lower costs for the individual that is commissioning the project, we try to find a crew specifically in that state so we're not paying for travel for them.
gotcha.
So, right now we are working with people in Texas and in South Carolina and in New York. I'm based out in Maryland, so the crew here can do Maryland, Virginia, or DC. But the goal is to have a crew in every state and to multiply myself so I don't have to charge them for travel at all. I could just send someone in that state to do the interviews as well. But ultimately the goal is to make it available for anyone anywhere in the United States.
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you thought at all about remote interviews like we're doing right here, or does that somehow diminish the experience?
It definitely diminishes it because we want to make the video entertaining and personable. And to be honest with you, some of the people that we've worked with are not in a position where they can even be on camera. So we want to accommodate those individuals. We're talking about some individuals that are in their 90s, and it wouldn't be fair to ask them to jump on a on the camera, but also the way the video looks, it looks like a Netflix video. So it's just, we wouldn't be able to give that effect if it was on like a Zoom or,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So how have you been getting the word out so far about your project?
To be honest with you, really what started the snowball effect was I have a friend in this area. Well, she doesn't live in this area. She lives in another state, and her grandmother was like towards the end of her life, and she called me and she said, "Hey, do you mind just going out and just recording her story?" She wasn't hiring me. I was just birthing the legacy project at that point. And so she was just like, "Can you just record her story, because I don't want to miss this opportunity and I don't think I'll be able to get out there for another few months." And so I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll go record this story," and I went to her house and recorded it. And my friend didn't ask me to do it, but I was like, "You know what? I'm going to make this documentary video for her." And so I did that, and obviously she fell in love with it, and friends know friends. And so she showed her entire family the video. She showed her grandmother as well, and it just kind of skyrocketed since at that point, where they were like, I want one as well." And so that's really how I've been kind of getting the word out. It's been through word of mouth. I haven't done any active marketing setup or anything like that. I
Wow.
just feel like the Lord led me to this, and the Lord will bring those individuals to me. It's something that I don't know. When I started the publishing company, I knew I had to have some sort of marketing. But for the legacy project, I had a deep peace inside of me that the Lord was going to lead the right people. So the podcast efforts is just the Lord telling me, just put it out there where you can, but don't spend any money on it. Like, it's going to happen the way it should happen. And that's all it
Right.
is. Yeah.
Right. I just love this idea.
Yeah. It's interesting. I actually met with a grief counselor. Was telling me about what she does, and she takes people through the process of death. And she was explaining to me that she used to work at a hospice, and they had something similar to the Legacy Project, where they asked 25 prompted questions. And she said, but once they answered the questions, the answers never went anywhere. She was like,
Mm.
we would just put it in a drawer, and unless the loved one asked, we wouldn't give it to them. So clearly there is s- somebody out there that believes it's important to do something like this,
Yeah.
but it isn't something that has been effectively done in a way that makes it so exciting. If you could see a video of your mother or father 10 years after they pass, wow, like, to me, that's exciting to me to be able to do that. So the first thing I did, especially once I found my crew, was record my mom and dad's story. Um, and man, when I recorded my dad's story, I have to say, like, I was just blown away, because 90% of the things that I asked I would have never guessed the answer.
Mm.
But so I just know, for me, I'm excited to see those same videos, many, many, many years to come, give it to my children for them to see it. To me, that just sounds super exciting for them. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because death is kept behind a veil in our society. And I discovered this, it's been almost 4 years ago. My wife died of lung cancer. And the language at the funeral home, it was presented. They used terminology like opening the grave, and the traditional funeral where the body is preserved and it's put in a casket, and you have the funeral, and then you walk away and strangers bury your loved one in the ground. Just so impersonal and so, like, hidden.
That's
But
right.
then when it hits you, it kicks you in the teeth. And it I remember feeling kind of angry that why do they do this? Why do they hide it behind a veil so that when you're faced with it, you get kicked in the teeth with it? It didn't make any sense to me. And how we frame that experience has so much to do with how it hits us. As Barbara was 55 when she died, And I was just broken. And then one day, months later, and I tell this story all the time, almost every time I speak, I'm walking along the river and I had a memory. I remembered that when we first got married, she was 22 and it was just 3 or 4 months after we got married. She was diagnosed with encephalitis and she went in the hospital and she lost her vision and she lost her speech and she had grand mal seizures and she didn't know who I was. She told me later that I knew I liked you, but I couldn't figure out who this man that kept coming to see me in my hospital room was. But she knew who Jesus was and she knew who her 3 boys were. And she's praying in the spirit because she doesn't have speech at this point. Her brain has this infection raging in her brain. But she's praying and she says, Jesus, if you will let me live, I will teach my children about you. And she felt the Holy Spirit come down over her bed like a quilt and just cover her. And she slowly, after that, starting the next morning, started to get better. But my memory on that riverbank that day and my realization was that if somebody had told me at that moment, she's not going to die, she's going to live 33 more years, I would have been ecstatic. I would have been overcome with joy. And so I had a choice. I had a choice to be full of joy for the 33 years we had together, or to be overcome with sorrow and bitterness and regret. And that's kind of the choice that you're giving people, is that you're saying you can preserve these memories so that after your loved one dies, you are able to spend time with those memories and you are able to replace those feelings of grief and sadness with feelings of joy and appreciation for the good times you had together.
That's right.
And instead of the regret of looking back and say, I wish I had done X, Y, and Z. And I think regret is such a thief. It steals our joy. It steals our vitality. It steals our abundance because we spend time focusing on what we regret, what we should have done, what we could have done, what we might have done, which we can't change any of that, but we can change what we do today.
That's right.
And if we're spending today in regret over what happened yesterday or what we think might happen tomorrow, we're missing the moment.
That's right. That was powerful. That was powerful, Chris.
Yeah. Thank you. So I'm so glad that I'm giving you the opportunity to share your message. And I hope that thousands of people listen to this podcast and can hear about your project.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do want to maybe say one note is that, I think oftentimes we think about sharing our story is for people to just remember what they have accomplished, but also sharing your story also breaks cycles. So a good example of that was we recorded the life story of an older gentleman who his son didn't even know that when in his younger years, his father had started a business and the business took them out, like bankruptcy, all of that. All he knew was about his father's success for the preceding businesses that he started, right? So fast forward, his father passed away and he went ahead and listened and uh, watched the video of his father's story. And it was at the perfect time because his son was also going through a major bankruptcy from a loss from a business. And he said in a note to us, hearing what happened to my dad, which I never knew about, made me realize that if God could get him through this, he'll also get me through this. So when we talk about history repeating itself, it's only when we don't know about that history that it tends to repeat itself, right? So
Right.
ultimately, sharing your story can also break cycles because what God could put you through and get you through God will do the same for the person that you love.
Now that's powerful.
Yeah.
Because within families, and people may or may not believe this, but within families, we operate under generational curses and generational blessings within families.
That's right.
The Bible says in the Ten Commandments that God will visit the sins of the father on the third and the fourth generation, but he will visit his blessings on 1,000 generations of those who love him and keep his commandments.
Yeah.
And so when we're parents, I think that's one of the most humbling things about becoming a parent is you realize that you're passing on who you are to this tiny person who has, completely depends on you to take care of them.
Yep.
And oftentimes when we see whatever we're carrying from our parents and we want to provide a better legacy for our children in terms of what kind of person we help them to become. And if we come from a family that has been, racked by addiction or abuse or neglect or any number of problems that make life difficult, and we want better for our children and we want to break those generational curses, and
That's
we're
right.
intentional about doing that, that can change our family tree for generations.
100%. When I interviewed my father and mother, I found out that addiction was something that our family dealt with. I had no idea, at that point. But it allowed me to tread lightly, right? And to share that with my son, because sometimes when you open up that door, it's very hard to close it.
Mhm.
But had I not asked and understood that that is something that has been an issue, we would have never thought to even break that curse upon our family's life.
Mhm.
Never, never.
Right.
It never even fazed me. But now when I think about it, my brother dealt with addiction, my grandfather dealt with addiction. So it's so important to be able to know these things for the sake of the spiritual legacy we're leaving our children and our children's children.
Right. And sometimes when we think we're protecting our children, we're actually not,
That's right.
right?
That's right.
Because not everything that feels bad is harmful and not everything that feels good is helpful.
That's true.
Oftentimes it's the difficult things in life that teach us the lessons that we need to learn and that give us the character and the perseverance to carry on.
Amen.
And I can see where your project would like give people permission to maybe tell some of those parts of their life that maybe they're not proud of. Maybe they have regrets and maybe they were never brave enough to share, or maybe just for whatever reason, and giving them permission to get that off their chest. I can imagine that there would be times when that would just be very liberating for people.
Absolutely. And we always try to end on a good note. So while they may share a part of their story that is regretful, we follow that thread to the point where something good came out of it, because you
Mm.
will find that something good always comes out of it. You just have hindsight that you never paid attention to, at that
Right.
moment.
Right. Yes, it's the storm that makes the sunshine
That's
so
right.
beautiful afterwards.
That's right.
It's the valley that makes the mountaintop experience
Yep.
triumphant. And I think so often that's lost in today's world. Everybody wants a microwave solution.
Yeah.
Everybody wants a fix it now solution.
Yeah.
And that's not how life works. The real gifts are the ones that you prevail and you continue and you continue and you don't give up and you don't give in and you say, I'm pursuing this dream. God placed this dream in my heart and I'm pursuing it.
Yeah.
I don't care what comes against me. And
Yeah.
wow. So do you have a YouTube channel? Do you have a website? Do you have social media? How do people find you?
Yeah, the easiest way to find me is at the one and only publishing.com. And that is usually that's my handle on everything, the one and only publishing, just with no spaces. And I do have a site dedicated to just the legacy project. It's just legacy forward slash the one and only publishing.com. So if anybody would want to get in contact with me, happy to help. And, one of the biggest benefits is this: even if you are unable to do the project with us, you can also access really great questions you can ask your loved ones. We all have iPhones, right? Or some type of phones that we could use. Even if you just do that, I encourage you to do that for yourself, to be able to record even some answers to those questions. So you could download those questions from directly from our website. But I guess my last note would be, if you haven't spoken to someone that you love and haven't been in their presence, like, just pick up the phone. Just pick up the phone and talk to them, even if it's just a moment, because I promise you, you will remember that when they pass. You will recall that moment. So that's what I would encourage people
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah. Well, I remember Barbara, my late wife, when it was actually before we got married, and my grandmother um, had some health issues, and she was 85, and she kept telling me, "You need to go see your grandmother. You need to go see your grandmother. You really need to go see your grandmother." And so I went one Saturday and spent the whole day with my grandmother, and
Amazing.
she died the following week. And I was
Okay.
so thankful for that day that I had with my grandmother. And I would have been if I hadn't gone, it would have been hard. I mean, it would have been, you talk about regret. We talk about, these missed opportunities. And I've been blessed to be remarried, and Michelle and I have grand adventures planned for the rest of our lives. And but I'm going to tell people about your project as I talk to people, and when it comes up about preserving legacy and preserving, I think, family history,
That's right.
right?
Good.
What are the roots where we come from? Where are those? What is the background of what our family tree represents? And I think so often when we forget that, it can make you like a ship without a rudder. You're like trying to figure everything out for yourself and not understanding, like you were talking about, knowing some things about your family history and knowing that there are some tendencies that are there that you can be aware of,
Hmm.
rather than just being kind of blindsided. Like, where did that come from? So, well, thank you so much for joining me today. And this has been just a great conversation. And I wish you all the luck in the world and all the blessings going forward. And would love to hear. Do you have case studies or stories on your website at all? Or
Yeah, but it's not the actual individual, it's just this
right,
their story, but
right,
yeah,
yeah,
on our
you got to
social media.
respect people's privacy, but like, get some of the situations,
Yeah,
out there, and
yep,
let people know kind of some of the things that people are dealing with, because people relate when people see, oh, well, that's kind of like what we're going through in our family, and it helps make it real.
that's right,
So,
that's right. Thank you, Chris.
well, thank you, Mimi. I enjoyed it, and we will put your contact information in the show notes, and hopefully lots of people will be contacting you.
Awesome, thanks.
Yes. So for our listeners, thank you for listening to Aging in Place as a Team Sport. And if you have any subjects you would like to hear us discuss, or any providers you would like me to interview, please let me know. Meanwhile, this is Chris Moore with Senior Remodeling Experts. See you next time.